Welcome in to a breakthrough day and a life-changing moment. I am so glad that you're here. Just for context, at the time of this recording, I have just come out of the other side of a 40-hour internet outage. I don't think I've ever had the internet be out for so long at home, but I just knew when I woke up this morning, whatever the timing was going to be, whatever had to happen, whatever was going to take place with all of the tech elements, I just knew I was going to record this for you today. Here I am. I'll say more about that a little bit later on as an example, actually, that I want to share with you later on in the teaching. But all you need to know for right now is that I am buzzing with this material. I feel like I've spent even more time with it than a typical training because the internet has been out, couldn't watch Netflix on my TV, couldn't stream music on devices, couldn't upload anything, or et cetera, from my work computer. And so I feel like more than ever, I have just been sitting with these notes. They were on my phone, now they're finally on my computer, but I am ready to go and ready to share this with you today. I want to share with you today my secret for continual financial flow. That is what this training, as you hopefully know from the title, is all about. And that is truly what I want for every single person watching this. A continuous and beautiful and ever-expanding financial flow. If you are watching this or listening to this at any point in the future and on any platform, I want for you to have the most abundant year of life that you have ever had thus far. And for the record, if you're watching this and you somehow got here but you're new to me, you don't know my story, you don't know much about me, let me just say for reference, I did not grow up with money, right? It was very much something that I saw other people have. I saw other people doing well who seemed to have it easy. I saw other people that I perceived were living in abundance and prosperity and wealth, but it was not my experience. And I didn't know any pathway, nor was I taught a pathway for it to be my experience. And yet, here I am today, and as I record this, from a beautiful multi-million-dollar condo in the sky in downtown Los Angeles that I feel so grateful to call home, I can honestly say to you, I am already, in countless ways, living a life that is far more abundant than anything I dreamed of as a kid, or even as I was studying, as I was learning to be a coach, as I was beginning to navigate the world on my own in college. Even then, this is so much more than what that version of me could ever have imagined would be possible. And so I feel incredibly grateful. I feel blessed in so many ways. I feel in the flow and in overflow as I bring you this training. And truthfully, I want you to have everything that you need, everything that you desire, and even more. If you've been with me for some time, you know I recently did an entire program and teaching series on overflow, because that is the vibe that we are living in this year. Everything you need, everything you desire, and still even more left over. But to set up this training in particular, you know, one of the things I've learned in business and as a coach, as a teacher, as a leader over the years is that often what is most valuable to other people, specifically in our audience and in our community, is stuff that we take for granted. right? I know people out there who have a personal brand, business owners, coaches, leaders. You may know what I'm talking about. You may understand this, that it's often the things that are so natural to us. We don't even think twice, right? Well, we don't even think about that being something of value, that being something other people don't naturally get, that being something that other people would want to learn from us, right? And yet, so many times it proves to be true that often the most valuable thing that we could share with somebody, right, is something that comes very natural to us. Something that is just a part of our life. Something that is just second nature to us. And so this is one of those things for me. That at this point in my story and in my journey, it is who I am, it is my life, it is second nature to me, and I am very excited to be sharing it with you today. The truth is, I really have practiced this principle for, as I did the math today at the time of this recording, something like 13 going on 14 years now, well over a decade. And something that's always been important to me over the years is I don't just want to learn a new principle and then immediately teach it and put it out into the world, and this is my area of expertise. I believe that we can do better than that as leaders, and I believe that we can really hone in on what is our unique gifting, what is our zone of genius, what is the message and the work and the contribution that I can uniquely and authentically make. And so as I was getting ready for this and adding up all of the time and the years that it has been that I have practiced this, it really did occur to me. This is one of the most long-standing principles from my life that I could possibly teach you. Now, I call it my secret weapon for continual flow because this is the principle that ensures me there is always more money on the way. That there is always more flowing to me. At all times, in all economies, in all circumstances and conditions, there is always money flowing in. This is the principle that guarantees that, and I will get into the science and the metaphysics of that later. But I just have a confession off the bat here, and that is the only reason that I haven't taught this specific training in this way, this explicitly, up until this point in my journey is that, well, to be very frank and honest with you, for a long, long time, I was scared. I was scared of being labeled, among other things, quote unquote, prosperity gospel. And you can let me know in the comments as you watch this, have you heard that term before? Have you heard people warn about that term before? Have you seen people attacked for that before, right? I was very scared for a long, long time to be accused of being prosperity gospel. And it's funny because even before I did this training, I remember I just put out a message on my platform that I thought was such a beautiful energy of blessing for anyone in my community who wanted to receive it. And it came from my heart and it came out of my time of reflection and prayer and meditation. And I remember I put it out on my timeline and this woman commented and said, somebody else out there will fall for this prosperity gospel stuff, but it won't be me. And I had a funny reaction to that, right? I posted about it, I laughed about it, I sat with it, and in the end, I found myself thinking, if I'm going to be accused of being prosperity gospel, just for putting a beautiful, genuine message of blessing out into the world, I might as well share with my people, with my community, with my clients, everything that I know about prosperity and living in the flow. I might as well just go for it, right? And so even though I genuinely felt nervous, and even as I hit record today on this training, felt a little more nervous than I normally would, to be sharing something that I knew might be countercultural or controversial or unconventional within the personal development industry. I also really felt at the core of my being that it was the most in integrity thing I could do to share what I actually practice and have used and have seen work for me over the years in this area as clearly and specifically and practically as possible. Now, whether it resonates with you or not, only you can decide. That is up to you, and that is fine with me either way. And what you do with this material, whether you try it, whether you practice it, whether you do anything at all with it or not, that is up to you. But you know, this week, T.D. Jakes reminded me, you are not running for office. You don't need everyone to like you, but you do need to complete your assignment. And I pray that that encourages a leader watching this today. You are not running for office. You don't need everybody to like you, but you do need to complete your assignment. And that is my mission here today. And as we get into it, I really want to say, the more I thought about that oh so scary accusation that nobody in the ministry world wants to receive of being quote unquote prosperity gospel, the more I thought about it, the more I had to do the most textbook, signature, classic Stephen Lovegrove move that there is and look up some definitions. And so before we get into the core truths I want to share with you today and the challenge that I want to give you to change your whole life today, let's begin with some definitions, shall we? I told you, textbook Stephen Lovegrove. So, first of all, the definition of prosperity is the condition of being continually successful, growing, thriving, flourishing. The condition of being continually successful, growing, thriving, flourishing. Now, I have talked about this word and this concept of prosperity elsewhere, so I'm not going to get into it heavily here, but I do want to say there is an old sacred text that reads, God's will for you is that you would prosper just as much as your soul prospers. That you would prosper in every way externally just as much as your soul prospers. And you may have heard me talk about this before, how a lot of times people go to one extreme or the other when it comes to this, which is why prosperity gets such a bad name. And so there are people who only talk about this in the external realm. And then you end up with people who are empty and unsatisfied and disillusioned because they got everything they thought they wanted externally. But of course, we know life doesn't work from the outside in. And so they're still unhappy. They're still unfulfilled. Now they're disappointed. Now they're disillusioned. It doesn't work to make prosperity just an external material money thing. Right? We want to prosper, as the text says, as our soul prospers. But as you may have heard me talk about, it also doesn't work to take money out of the equation. And I shared this very dramatic story one time on Facebook about how there was a spiritual gathering, and I have jokingly say I almost walked out of, but I really did have a big mental dialogue with myself because the speaker was talking about prosperity, but they wanted to make it about everything except money. And there was even this like condemning tone to it of, if I said prosperity and you thought about money, that's on you. How dare you make this about money? What about a prosperity of love? What about a prosperity of joy? What about a prosperity of peace? And to that, what I want to say is, who told you that it was an either or? Who told you that it couldn't be both? Why not a prosperity of peace and a prosperity of resources? Why not a prosperity of love and a prosperity of resources? Why not a prosperity of joy and a prosperity of resources? So we want to avoid those two extremes where either we make it all about one external thing and not a holistic picture, but also avoiding the extreme where we say, it's not really, though, physical external money. Like, it doesn't really include or mean that. What if we just owned the condition of being continually successful, growing, thriving, flourishing? That is meant for you. That is your birthright. That is your destiny. What if we just own that? Because that is the definition of prosperity. And then, of course, the definition of gospel is good news or good story. Good news or good story. Now, when I got these definitions in front of me, I thought to myself, well, God forbid that we have a message of good news or a good story for people to step into about being continually successful and growing and thriving and flourishing. God forbid we do that. God forbid we teach that, right? And I said that jokingly, but as soon as I did, in my mind, I heard, isn't it interesting, though, that is the paradigm people are living in? God forbid is like a lighthearted expression and figure of speech and just way that people use language, right? But look at the underlying paradigm that really does live here for people. God forbid that we do that. God forbid that we receive that. God forbid that we have that. And again, I just want to ask this question. Who said? Who told you that? Where did that idea come from? Because I would argue to you today, lovingly, gently argue, that God is not in any way against you prospering and thriving and flourishing in every way, inside and out. And I just have to ask, on the basis of logic, on the basis of principle, on the basis of our belief system here, why would infinite love, power, presence, intelligence, and possibility not want all of its creation to thrive? Why would God be invested in you being stuck? Why would God be invested in you being broke? Why would God be invested in you being miserable? In you being unfulfilled? In you not having what you need or desire, right? So there is good news and a good story of prosperity to tell here, one that has supported me in being successful and thriving all of these years, and I am happy to be sharing this story. I'm honored and thrilled and excited, in fact, to be sharing this story, and if that is the prosperity gospel, then so be it. Because I can live with that, right? And I don't just want to live in this good news, this good story about continued success and flourishing and thriving. I don't just want to live in that for myself. I want to expand it to all people. This is not just for one organization, for one group, for one category or religion or type of people. This is for anyone who claims it as their own. All things are possible for the one who believes, and you are the one. That has been my message from the very, very beginning. So I just want to say, why do the scammers, if you will, get to corner the market on this metaphysical principle? They don't get to do that anymore. And truthfully, this is not something that came from one tradition, from one environment, from one religion. This is ancient wisdom that cuts across so many spiritual traditions. You can literally look up What are the top 5 religions in the world? What are the top 10 religions in the world? And what you will find is this principle, in some way, shape, or form, is taught in all of them. The bottom line is, there are a ton of people worldwide who work with these principles, who work with the law, who work with the belief system that I'm about to talk through powerfully in their own lives at cause. And it works wonders for them. And if it works for them, why not me? Why not you? You know, like I said, when I added it up, I have been personally practicing this on a consistent basis for well over a decade. And to be more specific with it, I actually started practicing what I'm about to share with you right after I got kicked out of the house. I mean, literally within a month or two. If you know my story, you know that I grew up in a fundamentalist religious cult. Certainly did not accept gay people, but also did not accept anybody really who thought or believed or behaved differently than them. So I get kicked out of the house at 18 years old. Literally within about a month or two of that, somebody taught me the principles that I'm going to share with you today, and I began to practice this, trusting that I would be provided for every step of the way. And I really have been, every single day of my life since then. What's wild is this predated discovering the coaching industry for me. This predated me finding my first coach. This predated starting a business, learning to be a coach, investing in myself in any of those ways. This predated all of that. Like I said, this is an OG thing for me. But within a month or two of getting kicked out of the house, I began to practice this, trusting I would be provided for every step of the way. And I really have been. And you know, my beliefs and my spirituality may have grown and evolved and expanded over the years in various ways, but this principle has worked for me all throughout these years because there is universal truth and power in it. So I'm excited today to talk to you about generosity, and to talk to you about generosity in a very specific way. Not in a transactional way, not in a superstitious way, but rather systematic, consistent, committed, aligned, intentional energy in motion. And I know I just threw a lot of words at you there. We'll unpack all of it, but I'll read that line one more time. Systematic, consistent, committed, aligned, intentional, energy in motion. So depending on where you watch this training, you may have seen there is a module I taught around 5 or so years ago around the concept of generosity and the power of generosity. If you have access to that teaching and you'd like to watch it, it is available for you. But really, this teaching is going to go even more extensively into generosity, both on an energetic and a practical level, and really going to give you everything that you need. So if you've watched that one already, we're about to go 10 times deeper. And I'm going to share with you everything I know, everything I believe, everything I practice with generosity that has changed my life. And this may just be the number one module that you hear from me that changes the course of the rest of your life. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you're ready to take some notes. If you're not already doing so, you are invited to, certainly. 6 core truths that I want to share with you today on how I practice generosity and use it in my life daily, and how it is the secret to continual flow. Core truth number 1, giving acknowledges your source and expresses gratitude. Giving acknowledges your source and expresses gratitude. So where this idea really started for me in a way that didn't ever click or connect or do anything from me was as a little kid, as I said, growing up in a very strict, very sheltered, very conservative town, and within that town in a fundamentalist religious cult. I knew my parents believed in this idea that they called tithing, right? And I didn't know much about it, but I knew that there was this concept of we give a certain percentage to our church out of our paycheck, right? That's all I knew. And there was no emotional or energetic or spiritual resonance for me around that concept as a kid at all. Now, as I got older, as I, of course, left that world and my own beliefs evolved, there was a lot that you can understand I was initially very skeptical about, because so much of what I had been taught about God in general had to do with guilt and fear and punishment. And when I even thought about the stuff that people at school or people at church or parents, teachers, authorities, when I even thought about a lot of what I had seen modeled and demonstrated and practiced, so much of it felt like it was coming from this place. It was coming from obligation. It was coming from guilt. It was coming from fear. And so as I am finding a way as an adult to have my own relationship with the divine and to connect to a God that I know without a doubt to be unconditional love, you can understand I'm skeptical of a lot of this stuff. And yet, as I was discovering, there were new and better ways to think about God. Not as an anthropomorphic man in the sky who is angry and waiting to punish you, but as an infinite creator, the source of all life, the unconditionally loving presence of all that there is. I started learning that there were better ways to think about God, and maybe more importantly, better ways to connect to God and to experience the divine. And in the same way, I learned over time that there were better ways to think about giving. You know, it's funny. I think, this is just my suspicion, but I think God knew that I needed to hear this message from a different source that I trusted to really be able to take it in. That it couldn't sound like my parents. It couldn't sound like the world I grew up in. It couldn't sound like the cult. I think God knew for me to be able to hear this timeless spiritual principle, it needed to come from a different source. So this message began to come through for me in different forms that were not from the world that I grew up in. And hearing a Jewish rabbi speak about this really changed me. I'll come back to that in a second. Hearing a very hippie teacher of metaphysics in the New Age world speak about this changed my perspective. Hearing a completely non-religious, non-spiritual, but very successful, wealthy business person speak about this, that changed me as well, right? Because all of these people come from different worlds, different environments, different traditions, and they all believe different things. They don't all have the same theology, but they all seem to know that there is a principle here that works. And that told me this isn't an idea that belongs to any one group. This is just an idea, a truth, a principle that is available, like all spiritual law, to be worked with by anyone who wants to claim it. And I think if you've been following me for any length of time, you know I'm very passionate about whatever your background is, whatever you participate in or do not participate in religiously, whatever you do or do not believe or experience spiritually, I think one of the most empowering things I can do is help every single human being who wants to learn have access to these spiritual laws and principles in a language they can hear, in a way that works for them, so that they can truly thrive, so that they can get what they want, so that they can change and create their life from the inside out. And so, to go back to something I mentioned, hearing a Jewish rabbi talk about this really changed me, because he was sharing about how for literal thousands of years, Judaism has taught this principle of when we receive, we give what they call the tithe, what they also call the first fruits, we give that back. And it was just in some way healing and therapeutic and needed for my soul to hear somebody talk about this from a different world that wasn't triggering for me, that I could trust and at least have an open mind to, right? And I'm listening to this rabbi, and he's talking about, we have an understanding that God is the source of all that there is, and God is the source of our life, and God is the source of our resources, of our money, of all that flows to us. And we give as a way of acknowledging the source. We give as a way of expressing gratitude and saying thank you. And I'm listening to this, and something started to click for me. Because you know what? As you've heard me teach and talk about many times, I do believe that God is the source of all that there is, and there is in fact a limitless, infinite source and supply that is never confined by or limited to circumstances or time or physical, external, human limitations. And this source flows to me, yes, but it also flows through me, and it's also beyond me. It surrounds me. It's bigger than me. And so I started to realize there is this principle, and it has nothing to do with guilt or obligation or duty, but there is this principle of giving is a way for us to acknowledge our source and to express gratitude. Recognizing I'm not making this all happen on my own. And do you feel this distinction, by the way? You are at cause in consciousness for your life and your experience and your reality. That is true. But you don't know how to make your heart beat. You don't know how to make yourself breathe correctly even while you're asleep. You don't know how to make the wind blow. You don't know how to make the sun fill the earth with warmth and heat and light. You don't know how to make a river flow down the stream. There's so much that is always happening, always working, always flowing to us and through us and around us and for us and bigger than us. And I think there's a beautiful practice in acknowledging this beautiful universe was here before my human experience began in it. And I didn't make all of this happen. And there is so much good that has flowed to me over the years. There is so much good in my life and my reality now. There is so much good that is on the way to me. And it's so much bigger than me. And I don't, in fact, know how to make all of that happen. But I acknowledge that there is an infinite source and supply that is greater than me. And I choose to connect to that source. And I choose to recognize it. And I choose to say thank you for all the good that has flowed to me. And as I acknowledge my source, I become more open and receptive to it. And as I live in gratitude and celebration, even more good flows in. And as I live in this space, it all flows so automatically, so beautifully, so effortlessly when I trust it and I let it happen. And I'm telling you, hearing this Jewish rabbi talk about this was life-changing for me because it just resonated with something at the core of my being that I knew was not culty, that I knew was not a religious thing, that I knew was not just for one group of people or XYZ. It tapped me into this core reality. Now, I'm going to get a little nerdy here, okay? You're going to really see that I'm a religion and theology grad for a second, but I truly do love this stuff. And I love working with people's belief systems. Why? Because this isn't just ethereal, vague, irrelevant stuff. When you change your belief system, you change your life. And if you leave this training with a new belief system, before long, you will have a new life. And that is what I know to be true. That is at the core of all of my work. That is why I do what I do. All things are possible for the one who believes. And if you can change your belief system, you can change your life. But I want to talk about, just for a second, if you'll entertain me for a nerdy theological moment, this idea of the tithe that really does come from Judaism, right? Hence me learning about this from the rabbi. Just for anybody who's curious, right? The idea of the tithe is 10%, right? Giving 10%. And again, in this concept, and there's many variations of this concept, but in this concept, in Judaism, there is this idea of your first fruits. And so people will often talk about giving the first 10% of what you've received. Now, I don't believe that I don't believe you have to give, period. And B, I don't believe you have to give a set percentage, a certain percentage, or specifically 10%, right? I will tell you, I have given many different percentages in my lifetime, and as I've leaned into and trusted this principle more and more, I have actually given above the 10% threshold since 2016, and I continue to do so to this day, right? But I want to share this because I just think there's such rich spiritual depth in where a lot of these principles came from that, again, has so often gotten lost in translation, right? But to speak to this idea of where did this come from, the tithe and 10%, why is it 10%? The concept is that 10 is a number that represents wholeness or completion. That's where this came from, right? Because if you think about it, when we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? When we get to 10, that is the last number, you could say, that stands on its own, right? I mean, I quite literally run out of fingers when I get to 10. So when we get to 10, we suddenly have to start stacking. So 11 is 10 plus 1. 20 is 10 times 2. 100 is 10 times 10. And I already said I'm not great at math on the fly when I'm teaching especially, so I'm not going to go any further than that. But the point is, the concept that originated this is that 10 is the number of wholeness, right? So that when people in Judaism give the tithe, give the first fruits, give the initial 10%. The concept of it is the 10% represents the whole. So I take the 10% and I bless it. I take the 10% and I circulate it. I take the 10% and I sow it. What I do with the 10% is a stand-in for the whole. And if the 10% is blessed, the whole is blessed. Now again, I'm not saying this because you have to do 10%. I'm not saying this because we all have to do it in that exact way. But I had to nerd out for a second because I just love a powerful spiritual concept. And there's this representation there of I'm giving the 10 as an acknowledgement of my source, as a celebration of all that has flowed to me, knowing that I didn't make all of this happen, knowing that there is a source that is bigger than me, knowing that there is more to come. And I give the 10 as a representation of the whole because it all comes from the source. And I celebrate and express gratitude for it all, and it is all blessed. And I put it all into the hands of God. And I ask for it all to be used for my flourishing and for the flourishing of the world. And so there's this principle of acknowledging the source and expressing gratitude. And even where this idea came from, the 10 was always supposed to be a representation of the whole. So how does this look and how does this feel for me as I practice it now? For me, this is my way of affirming. I partner with that source, with God, with that unending supply and flow, with life itself. I partner with it. And I am open to receiving in all ways. And I express gratitude for all that is flowing to me. And I stay connected to the source, and I stay in the flow, and I open up with gratitude to receive all that is meant for me. That is how this feels to me. That is how I look at this principle now as Stephen Lovegrove, now in this season in my life. And the question becomes then, how do we give back to our source, right? How do we do that? Because of course, when we talk about God, as Rob Bell reminds us in his book, what we mean when we talk about God, we're talking about an invisible reality. It is very, very real, but it is invisible. So how do we give back to our source? And you can probably guess, I'm not going to tell you that it has to be anywhere, anyone, anything in particular, but there is a reason that all major religions in the world and so many spiritual traditions and even so many entrepreneurs and celebrities and business leaders find a way to do this, a way to give, a place to give that allows them to give back to the source of life, to the source of good, to the source of all they have received. Now, I say, if you're asking me, how do I give to my source? I say, look for where do you feel spiritually supported? Where do you hear from God? Where do you hear from your soul? Where do you receive divine guidance? What makes you feel most connected and alive and loved and safe and tapped in on a spiritual level? T.D. Jakes says it this way: feed what feeds you. Bless what's blessing you. Pour into what pours into you, and give what gives to you. Now, I want to point something very important out here. There is a mutuality and a reciprocity and a joyful energy exchange in this principle, right? And I just want to acknowledge, it would not have felt good, which is why I didn't do it. Plus, I was a minor that didn't really have money, right? But it would not have felt good for me to give to anyone involved in the world that I grew up in, right? Because they were harming me in various ways. They were abusing me as authorities in various ways. They were not taking care of me. They were not protecting me. They were not doing right by me. It would not have felt good. And I want to acknowledge here, for many people, the very principle and idea of giving in this way feels icky, especially from what they've encountered or been taught or been told in the past, because they either A, feel pressured to give to an organization they suspect is wasting the funds, or B, they feel obligated to give to a religious organization that they do not trust or may even find harmful, or C, they feel manipulated or they saw somebody else be manipulated into giving to a random televangelist on TV one time who they had no connection or relationship with. And so in all of those scenarios and in all of those paradigms, we end up with a giving that doesn't feel good. It might feel desperate. It might feel obligated. It might feel forced, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel spiritual, right? And so I want to repeat this quote. Feed what feeds you. Bless what's blessing you. Pour into what pours into you. And give to what gives to you. It feels good to bless what's blessing you. And I'm going to try not to get ahead of myself because there's stuff I'm going to share later on here, and particularly from my personal life and examples. But let me just leave it here for now and say it feels good to bless what's blessing you. It has felt so good to me over the years to give to someone or somewhere or something that has helped me reconnect to God and to love and to my true self. It has felt so good to me to give to someone or something or somewhere that has helped me find my purpose, that has changed the trajectory of my life, that has brought more joy in, that has brought more love in, that has brought more peace or happiness or abundance in. It feels good and reciprocal and joyful to bless what's blessing you. So that is core truth number one. Now, core truth number two is giving intentionally is actually sowing. Giving intentionally is actually sowing. Listen to this sacred text. Now God, who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge your harvest. You may have heard me reference this text before. I think there's a very important point here, which is God is an infinite source and supply. And that source and supply can show up in many, many ways. Now, a lot of people, all they have been taught is one little clause from that principle: bread for food. They have been taught that they can believe the source can meet their needs. The source can provide their next meal. The source can provide the essentials, right? The bare necessities, which always makes me think of the Disney song, right? And yet, the infinite source, unsurprisingly, can show up in infinite ways, and you may have heard me teach on this before. So just as it can show up as bread for food, and if you need your needs met, if you are in need, if you are hungry, etc., the infinite source can absolutely show up in that form. But the infinite source can also show up as seed to the sower. And there is an energetic principle, a spiritual principle, a metaphysical principle here, seed, time, and harvest, that I think we must understand. Now, I want to talk about the distinction of spending versus sowing, particularly given that we understand money is energy. Right? I think if you're watching this, if you're new to me or not, however you got here, if you're in this conversation of spirituality and personal development, it's probably not a completely foreign idea to you to hear the idea that money is energy. And if money is energy, a transfer of money is a transfer of energy, right? So really, we have the opportunity every time we transfer money to transfer energy. Now, we are taught growing up to view things through a spending paradigm, which inherently then makes it scary to release money. Because a spending paradigm implies once I spend it, it's gone. Once I spend it, I have less or I don't have it anymore. Once I spend it, that's the end of the story. And so we are taught growing up to view the transfer of energy that is circulating money through a spending paradigm. And by the way, think about how awful it feels on any level as a human to have your circulation cut off. When we only think about money in a spending paradigm, the circulation gets cut off. And it becomes scary to release money because it implies we will have less. But you know, A Course in Miracles says, well, it is true that in the physical world, if you give an object away, you have less now, or you don't have it anymore, right? Metaphysically, Course in Miracles says it is the opposite. Metaphysically, the truth about giving works exactly opposite to that. Because on a metaphysical level, what you give, you also receive, and you end up with even more. What you give increases. What you give gets multiplied. What you give expands. And Course in Miracles invites us to step into a new story, right? And it is a good story, but it might be a new story for somebody to step into today. A new story here, right? Where I don't give and then I have less, but I give and I simultaneously receive and I end up with more. And then I get to give again and repeat, repeat, repeat. And this is because giving intentionally is sowing. Giving intentionally is not spending, but sowing. Okay, here's another definition. So sowing means to plant a seed in order for it to grow. Secondary definition, to set something into motion. To plant a seed in order for it to grow, and to set something into motion. Now, when we give and circulate money from this paradigm, we are continually putting energy into our world, into our lives, into our future, and what we believe in. And there is so much power in this, because the power of this is you are not at the effect of somebody else's harvest, no matter what is happening in the world. Let's use the law of cause and effect and put it to work here. You get to plant your own harvest. You get to decide what you put into the ground. And if that is true, you get to choose the harvest you live in. You get to choose the energy that you set into motion. You get to live in your own personal economy at cause, governed by your seed time and harvest, seed time and harvest, seed time and harvest. Which brings me to core truth number 3. It is extra important then that we give to that which we know to be good ground. It is extra important, if we're going to sow this way, with this paradigm, with this understanding, that we give to that which we know to be good ground. Now, I had a client earlier this year, and they may actually be watching this, shout out to you if you are, you know who you are, and I love you. But I had a client ask me earlier this year, why is it that there is such an emphasis on giving in the personal development space with all of these coaches and all of these books? What is the obsession with giving? And my client was expressing to me, I have experience with the nonprofit world, and I've seen a lot of waste. I've seen a lot of frivolousness. I've seen a lot of things, and it doesn't light me up to necessarily put any money into that world now. So I don't feel currently energized or inspired by this, but why does everybody emphasize giving, right? And I want to speak to this because anytime that we're doing something that doesn't feel good at the core of who we are, it's never going to last, it's never going to stick, or it's never going to lead to a positive end result, right? And so I understand there is a place for discipline, there is a place for consistency, there is a place for taking the inspired right action even when you don't feel like it. But I'm talking about when something doesn't feel good at the core of your being, please do not proceed with it, right? By the way, if this teaching doesn't speak to you, doesn't resonate with you, isn't doing anything for you, you are under no obligation from me or anyone else to continue with this, right? I would strongly urge you not to continue doing anything in personal development that doesn't feel good at the core of your being. And so I was so glad my client brought this question forward, because my answer to this is, I wouldn't want anybody to give feeling nothing behind it. I wouldn't want anybody to give feeling like the money was wasted. I wouldn't want anybody to give feeling like it was doing nothing. But this is why it matters, that if we recognize our giving intentionally is not spending but sowing, well then let's make sure we're sowing into good grounds. So we give to those that have blessed and impacted and transformed our lives. We give to those we believe in. We give to those that are making the world better. We give to those with a message that we want amplified. We give to those that we want to be a part of their mission. We give to the place where we are planted and growing and thriving and flourishing. We give to where we hear God speak to us and where we receive. We give where we are connected. You know, the church tried to have a monopoly on this principle, and it has turned so many people off, because the church says you have to give to us, right? And you know, the church, I'm saying the church from my own experience, but the synagogue might say you have to give to us, the mosque might say you have to give to us, the televangelist might say you have to give to us, the aggressive person with the clipboard who stops you on the street might say with confidence you have to give to us. But here's the truth, because I'm always going to bring it back to universal law and principle. The truth is, God is in all things. So only you know where you feel connected to God. Only you know where you hear God speak to you. Only you know where you experience God most. Only you know where you feel that divine presence and hear that voice. Only you know what has changed your life. Only you know what is feeding you and blessing you and supporting you. Only you know where you connect to God in your own way. So you're allowed to hear from God wherever you hear from God. And you're allowed to connect to the divine wherever your energy leads you to connect. And you are allowed to give to wherever you know is good ground. And before we move on, because it's about to get extra fun and powerful in core truth number 4, I just want to say, part of the reason that I have given for all of these years and never stopped, never gotten discouraged, never quit on it, right, is because I have always given to good ground. And by the way, by my definition, by my choice, by my power of decision with that, not anybody else's. Because you know there's one thing I will take a stand for spiritually, and that is nobody gets to override your own inner spiritual authority because God lives within you. And so one of the reasons I've always felt good about this principle is I choose where I give, and I always have over the years, and I will not ever be bullied or pressured or guilt-tripped into any form of giving, right? And so I always feel good about it. Even as years go by, in retrospect, in hindsight, I always feel good about it because I always gave to what I knew was good ground. And by the way, again, I'm drawing contrast here because I want you to see there's a powerful principle here that really works. And there's a lot of noise and a lot of nonsense and a lot of BS that has been mixed in or put on top of it over the years that has made people not even want to try this, not believe there's anything real there. And God forbid, we don't want to get into the territory of that prosperity gospel, right? But I want you to see where there's a true principle and then where it gets misused, right? So you get to decide what is good ground for you. And if something doesn't feel like good ground, take your seed seriously. Take your energy seriously. Take your resources, your investment, your circulation. Take that seriously. And give to what you know to be good ground. If you don't, vibe with the nonprofit thing, then don't give to a traditional nonprofit. If you don't inherently trust any spiritual teachers or ministries or organizations, then don't give to somebody in that realm, but give to where you feel guided and led and called that you know it's good ground. I remember talking with a friend who is also a member of the LGBT community, and he was saying to me, I get tired of going to these fundraisers because it feels icky to give. And I feel like an hour and a half in through the night, they make you so afraid and they make you feel so depressed about the state of the world, and they make you feel scared and at risk and alone, and then they want to harness those vulnerable emotions and they want to say it's time to give. Now, please hear me on this. I have given to many organizations, including GLAAD, Human Rights Campaign, Trevor Project, etc., over the years. I'm not trying to paint everybody with a broad brush. I'm not trying to say don't give to these organizations. Many of these organizations do crucial work and need our help. But the point that I want to make is I just remember this conversation. It didn't feel good to him to give from fear, or from anxiousness, or from a guilt trip, nor should it have, because we don't want to give from that place. And I'm not even trying to weigh in on an organization or an approach. I'm saying take responsibility for you. If you are going to practice this, and I'll give you a challenge in a little bit here, if you are going to try this out for yourself and put this into practice in your life, give to somewhere that you can feel good about. Even if nothing else happened and there were no other factors, give somewhere that you feel great about having given because you know this is good ground. I want more of this in the world. I believe in this. I endorse this. Give to good ground. Core truth number 4. We give with intention. We give with intention. Now, I used this word earlier on, and I really do mean this. I don't believe anything about the approach that I am sharing today has to feel transactional. That is not how it feels to me. That is not how I want any of this to feel for you. So I don't mean, in this truth that we're going to unpack for a few moments, giving with intention does not mean to me that we start operating with a vending machine mindset. I'm going to put this dollar bill in, and then I'm going to press C4, and then I'm going to expect that specific thing to drop out of the machine, right? That is not the idea here, right? And by the way, that's not ever how I recommend that you create in consciousness, right? That's not proper use of the law of cause and effect. But think about this. If we are viewing our choice to give not as I'm spending something and then it's gone and I will never see it again, but if we're choosing to view our circulation of energy as putting a seed into the ground for something we want to grow, think about it this way. If we were going to put a literal seed in the ground for something to grow, we wouldn't do so mindlessly. We wouldn't pick a seed out of a bag and not pay attention. We wouldn't do so with our eyes closed. We wouldn't do so aimlessly. We wouldn't do so with zero expectation of what would eventually grow. It is just the principle. If we're going to put a seed in the ground, we have an expectation of a harvest to come. And I'm going to get back to that word expectation in a moment. And by the way, I have great expectation for how this training will change people's lives today. But anyway, we wouldn't put a seed in the literal ground without an expectation, without an intention, without something we wanted to grow, right? And so I want to challenge you today. Every time you decide to give, every time you circulate your resources, every time you put seed into the ground, you get to decide, what am I planting and what harvest do I want to see? What am I planting and what harvest do I want to see? So you get to choose every single time, what am I planting? What am I sowing? What is the harvest that I want to see? And by the way, one of the things that I love about giving in this way is I get to give out of the overflow I have received, right? So it never feels high pressure. It never even really feels to me like a big sacrifice or struggle or strain. And by the way, if you do this consistently enough, it won't be long before you don't have any resistance to it, because you don't feel like it's a decision you have to make in the moment. You feel like it's a decision you made long ago that you just stick with now because you know this works and let's keep doing what's working, right? But I just want to point out, in an industry where there are so many paradigms about invest it now, invest it up front, invest it even though you don't have it, and hope for a massive return down the pipeline. I'm not going to get on a side tangent here. You can go watch my program on over leverage to overflowing for a lot more in-depth teaching on that. But I just want to say, giving doesn't feel like any of that, and it doesn't have any of those energies to me. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with investing in yourself. I do it every month. There's nothing wrong with investing in something up front. There's nothing wrong with taking a risk, right? These are normal, essential business skills. These are things that every entrepreneur does. I'm not hating on taking risks, and I'm not hating on investing in yourself. But what I like about this is it's a very different paradigm and a very different energy of, I'm not giving, needing something from it. I'm giving from what is already here. I'm giving from what has already flowed in. I'm giving out of the overflow, out of the abundance, out of the more than enough that I have received. There's a gentle gratitude and ease with this, right? And there's just a principle that I love to work with here, that if you're going to plant a seed, know what you're planting and give it an assignment. If you're going to plant a seed, know what you're planting and giving it an assignment. I will tell you, I do this every time I give. And when I say one of my intentions with this training is really just to give you the very practical breakdown of this is my flow. This is my practice. This is what I do on a day-to-day basis. This is my secret for continual flow. Put it into practice and implement in your own life. I want it to be as clear and practical and implementable as it possibly can be today. And so what this looks like for me is I have, to be exact, 2 Evernote documents. So I have one document that is called Ongoing Continual Flow, where all of the quote-unquote seed in the ground is recorded. Then I have our monthly documents, where I keep track of this is what is being created this month, right? So I have the Ongoing Continual Flow document. I have the monthly document. Can I tell you, every single time I give, and just to give more practical detail, I don't want to skip any steps or leave anything out. What that looks like for me is every single day, I will go in, I will log in to the payment processor, and I will see what is the revenue that has come in today, or come in since the last time I checked, right? And then there is a percentage that I have chosen, and by the way, you can set the percentage, you can choose any number, and it's allowed to change over time, nothing wrong with that. By the way, you can always change your mind about anything, but there's a set percentage that I have chosen, and so I take the number of gross revenue that has come in, this is how I do it, and I immediately put it in the calculator, and I find out what is that percentage. What is that number? And then I give that number right then. And again, I'm not saying any of this is how you have to do it. I'm not saying you have to believe any of this. I'm certainly not saying you have to do any of this. This is just me sharing what I do and pulling back the curtain on it, right? But I take that number and I give it, and I give it literally first thing, before we even transfer the funds to the business account. This is a decision I've already made. I give that number. And as I do, there is not a single gift I make, if I can help it. Sometimes I'm on the go or something and I might miss one or two because I'm traveling, etc. But as much as I can help it, there is hardly a gift that I give that I don't set an intention for. If I'm going to put seed in the ground, I'm going to know what I'm planting, and I'm going to do it with intention, and I'm going to give an assignment to the seed. And so, literally, I do this in 2 ways. If the place that I give allows me to leave a note, and to share a note or to add a note with my giving, I will literally type it and send it to them. I don't care if somebody reads it or not. I do it for me. For my seed, for my intention, for my harvest, I put it there. But even if they don't, if the place that I'm giving that day does not have an option for notes, I still want to know, this is my seed in the ground. This is what I have chosen to put into motion at cause. This is what I am expecting a harvest of. And so I go into my document and I go into the ongoing one and I add that intention to the list. Or if I didn't get to write it before, I write it down there. And then I copy it and I go into the monthly document and I copy it there, right? And again, I'm sharing all these specifics, and some of these are just, intricacies that have to do with my daily flow and rhythm and business. I'm not saying you have to do any of this in exactly this way. I just want you to hear it, right? But every single time I give, if I have access to my phone, to my computer, and I have a second to type it out, I will set an intention with what I'm giving. Even today, as I was preparing for this training, and we were facing internet issues, right? A 40-hour internet outage. but I saw a vision that it was being restored sooner than expected. Okay, somebody? And when they told me there are no appointments today, nobody is available, no technician, sir, we will have to figure this out later this week. There is nothing you can do right now. I thought, you know what? I see something different, and I'm open to something different. And I believe something different is possible here. And I also happen to believe that the most congruent thing I could do in keeping with this training is use my seed with intention to set something into motion and give it an assignment. And so I literally copied it into my document, or from my document rather, into my notes so I could read it to you here. I gave this morning, and I had to type this out on my phone because that was the only place I had access. The computer's not loading, but I typed this out. This training I share today is the best thing I have ever shared, and it changes people's lives. Connection is restored to make it possible. I was dealing with a million things trying to get the day figured out with no computer, internet access, etc. But I still did my daily giving, and I still took a moment to set the intention. This training is the best thing I've ever shared. It changes people's lives. Connection is restored to make it possible. Now, I just want to celebrate because seed time and harvest is real. Cause and effect is real. When you set something into motion and you have an expectation and you know that you are sowing and you know that it's only a matter of time before it shows up, I just want to celebrate. This is real and it works. And the connection was literally restored this afternoon to make it possible. Now, that's a very fast harvest, and of course I gave it an assignment that was very immediate. I'm not saying, nor do I want to imply, that every single thing that I write down with this, 3 hours later, there it is. But can I tell you, there are countless things by now that I have written out and kept track of over the years. And I look back at my monthly lists, I look back on my ongoing continual flow overall list, and the amount of things, probably hundreds of things that I read through and go, and I remember that, and that happened, and that showed up, and these lists are just such an encouragement to me, and they remind me that this always works, and I am always in the flow. Core truth number 5, we give expecting it to return to us multiplied. Now, here's a distinction between 4 and 5. Truth number 4 is about how if we're going to set energy into motion, which money is, right? Energy in motion, we want to have an intention with that. We want to choose something powerfully at cause, and we want to expect the thing I set into motion, I'm going to see. That's truth number 4. Truth number 5 is about, and this is a little controversial for some people, but hang with me here. Truth number 5 is about, on a literal financial flow level, it is correct, according to spiritual principle, to expect what we give to return to us multiply. Right? You've heard me teach before. We don't get out of life automatically what we want. We get out of life what we expect. I learned this concept from Victor Bach. It changed my life. We don't get out of life, he says, what we want necessarily. We get out of life what we expect. And see, I witnessed growing up people giving maybe out of guilt, people giving out of obligation, people giving because their pastor told them to, whatever it was. But I will tell you, I never witnessed people giving with expectation, even though that is the most universal thing in this principle of all, right? I'm going to read you some famous words of Jesus that just articulate this so beautifully. Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full. Pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full. When I tell you, these words of Jesus are just very familiar to me, so I like quoting them. But this is a universal principle. It shows up in the teachings of Islam. It shows up, as I already said, in Judaism. It shows up in Hinduism. It shows up in the writings and the teachings within Taoism. It shows up across the board. There is a principle that people all around the globe from many different traditions and belief systems have observed to be true. And this is what A Course in Miracles is talking about. It doesn't make sense on a physical level because you would think if I give it to someone else, I don't have it anymore, or now I have less. And yet there's a magic, a miracle, a power to giving that no matter what name you want to call it by, people all around the world for thousands and thousands of years have recognized something powerful happens where the thing I give comes back to me. The thing I give is not gone forever. The thing I give comes back to me. This is why there's an old saying, no one has ever gone broke by giving. And I always find that striking because people have gone broke making all kinds of decisions. People have gone broke with lots of purchases. People have gone broke doing lots of things in business. But there's an old saying that says, no one has ever gone broke by giving. And I can honestly say it is my story, it is my experience, it is my testimony. As I have consistently made the choice to give over and over again for over a decade, I have never regretted it, and it has never lessened anything in my life. It has always led to more. It has always led to more. You know, I think about one time I heard someone use this analogy of paper airplanes, and I feel like this analogy felt really helpful and profound and smart to me when I first heard it. And every time I try to share it with a client or a friend, I feel like I'm very clumsy in how I say it. So forgive me for that. But I think the analogy is good. There's certainly a good truth in it. The analogy is, it would be like if we were standing behind a fence and we choose to reach up over the fence and to fly a paper airplane out into the world, right? But then the paper airplane was like a boomerang. So it reached wherever it was supposed to go, but then no matter what, it turned around and it came back to us doubling. And there's this energetic principle that what you put out into the world comes back to you, right? This is karma, this is cause and effect, this is metaphysics 101. But I want us to think about the paper airplane principle with giving. Because the paper airplane example says, what I send out into the world is going to come back to me, and it's not just going to come back to me, it's going to come back to me double. So I better be sure I feel good about what I'm sending out into the world. And there's this universal spiritual truth about giving, that what I give not only is not lost, and not only will it come back to me, but in the same way that in that example, the paper airplane brings another one back with it, right? What I give will come back to me with even more. What I give will come back to me increased. What I give will come back to me multiplied. And I feel like I've never said this before publicly in any sort of teaching or training, mainly because I didn't know how it would go over or be received. But as I quoted earlier, not running for office, don't need you to like me, this is my truth. I really believe personally, giving consistently took me to another level so quickly in business, more than anything else I did. There is a proverb that I quoted in the module you may have watched before this, The Power of Generosity, which says, "The world of the generous gets larger and larger." And that has been my experience. And to me, that is science, and to me, that is law, because it just makes mathematical sense that if what I give is going to come back to me and come back to me with more and come back to me multiplied, of course my world will only expand when I give. By the way, I also talked about this in the Power of Generosity module, but there's a reason that the literal translation of this text says, "Give, and it will be given to you," right? And if you look at the grammar, the language, the wording of the text, there is this important point to make that you want to give the thing you want to receive. Because give it, and it will be given to you. So, for example, if you want grace and communication and love from another human being, it would be unwise to give resentment and animosity and the silent treatment, expecting somehow that if you give that long enough, you're going to give, you're going to get what you want. We have to give and be willing to give the thing we want to receive. And by the way, does this not make sense metaphysically? Because when you give it, you tell the universe, I'm not in need, I'm not in lack, I'm not in shortage of any kind. I am in overflow because I have something to give. I am in overflow because I have something to give. And so this is why I always say, when people want to find a workaround and say, I want to try this principle, but I just don't want to do it financially, right? I'm willing to give my time. I'm willing to bake something. I'm willing to call a friend. And all of those things are beautiful. You should invest your time in things that matter to you and help others and make the world a better place. Maybe you should bake somebody cookies. Maybe you should call a friend and check on them. But I always make the point, if you find yourself not willing, not open, not wanting to trust that it is safe for you to give the very thing you want to receive, you might be looking at the energetic obstacle right there. Right? But here's why I love this principle so much, right? Truth number 4, we talked about giving with intention. And truth number 5, we're talking about giving with expectation, giving expecting to receive. Here's why this matters. Every time I give, right? I walked you through a little bit of my process. I set that intention. I have it recorded. I'm always expecting to receive, which means every single day of my life, I am always in harvest mode. Every single day of my life, I am always expecting a harvest. At this point, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that I have set into motion and written down and chosen to give as an assignment for the seed that I put in the ground and circulated, right? I'm always expecting a harvest. Let me put it this way. If I consistently sow over and over and over again, expecting to receive, before long, I wake up one day and I realize I'm going to give today. And I expect that because that is who I am. That is something I know to be true. I always give. But also, you wake up one day and you realize, I also expect to receive today because I have all of this seed in the ground. And I am so passionate about this. And you heard me touch on this a little bit in the Overflow program, but I'm so passionate about this because there are so many entrepreneurs and leaders out there, and the only muscle you know to work of faith is just invest more, invest more, invest more, invest more, invest more. And I called a client out on this the other day, and I said, isn't it interesting? You have been trained subliminally to use the word invest for all of these things, but you are not actually expecting to receive. You're using the word invest because somebody taught you, think about this in terms of investment, do this as an investment, view this in terms of investment. And I don't have a problem with that. I believe, like I said, money is energy. It's transferring energy in motion. I believe we should do things as a powerful, conscious, joyful investment, and an investment in ourselves and an investment in our purpose and our future. But do you understand that if you only ever invest, but never expect to receive, you haven't yet understood this truth, or something hasn't clicked because you're not living in the reality of seed time and harvest. If you have invested all of that, keep investing. But you better believe it should be harvest time right now. And these two things don't have to be separate. Some of you are in a mindset of, I'm going to sow, and one day off in the future, I'm finally going to hit a harvest. And I came to tell you, if that's been your mindset, this is that day. This is one day. This is your day. And I pushed through the 40-hour internet outage and numerous phone calls and technicians and all of this stuff because I had to get this message to you to tell you today is the day that if you haven't yet before, you begin to expect harvest. You begin to expect flow. You begin to expect to receive. And I'm telling you, you don't have to, in order to set intentions and do this, you don't have to write it down. You don't have to record it. You don't have to make a list. But what I find powerful is sometimes I want to be able to pull up my list and I want to be able to reference, look at all of the seed I have in the ground, right? Look at all the seed I have in the ground and look at all of the intentions. Look at everything I have believed for. Look at everything that has already happened. Look at everything that I have set into motion. Look at all of the harvest that is still on the way. And it does something for me to be able to look at that list. It is like high-level manifestation for me to look at that list. And again, I've never taught this before. I don't know how people are going to respond to this. And if it doesn't resonate, if this is not for you, A-okay with me. But it is high-level manifestation for me to look at this list. And this is why I live in continual flow. I know how much I have given. I know how much I have in motion. I know how much seed I have put in the ground. And I know that it is true. I cannot outgive a generous universe. I cannot outgive God. I cannot outgive life. I cannot outgive an infinite and unending source and supply. I know the seed I have in the ground. And for all of that seed that continues day in and day out, I expect a harvest every time. I expect a harvest daily. I expect a harvest on all of it. And even in the darkest moments of my life where I have found myself wondering, will there never be another opportunity? Will there never be another good year? Will there never be another whatever, fill in the blank? I have found myself remembering and coming back to and being anchored in this truth. There is always more on the way because you are in the flow and you are always giving and you are always circulating and everything you give always comes back to you multiplied, and then you get to give again and you get to celebrate and acknowledge and express the overflow again. And you get to set a new intention, and you get to set something new into motion, and you get to put some more seed in the ground. And then what you give will go out into the world and be a blessing and be a gift and be a beneficial presence, and then it will return to you multiplied, and then you get to do it again. I am in the flow always because I am giving always. And I can never give without receiving. There is certainly more on the way. You know, sometimes I will even give in a moment where I find the worry thoughts or the fear or the stress wanting to turn up the volume a little bit. Sometimes in one of those moments where the future looks uncertain, or I find myself wanting to go into a problem consciousness, in that very moment and in that very place, I will choose to give with like an extra visionary intention, just to tell myself in every level of consciousness, there is always more than enough, and there is always more on the way, and you are abundant, and you are in overflow, and you are taken care of no matter what. And that brings me to core truth number 6, the last one, which is give until your identity becomes a giver. You know, it's funny, when people often approach this conversation the first time, they often have questions like, what if I can't afford to give? Or what if it hurts me that I give? Or what if it doesn't work out for me when I give? And I understand having all of those thoughts and concerns, and if you are there in consciousness, I don't want you to judge yourself for any of it, and you are unconditionally loved, right where you are and just as you are. But I remember a mentor of mine told me years ago, and I didn't have the evidence and the experience of this yet, I just had to believe him at the time, but now I have the evidence, and now I have the experience, and now maybe I'm the mentor saying this to you. But a mentor said to me, a giver always has seed to sow. A giver always has seed to sow. I started to realize over time, as I gathered my own experience and my own evidence, that this really is true. I can't explain to you in every way because it's a little bit of a mystery how it all works. But like I said, there is a reason that this is ancient wisdom, that for thousands and thousands of years, people have taught this and spoke this and wrote this in so many forms. There's a truth to this. And a giver always has seed to sow. I started to have my own evidence of that. Just as you might decide today to begin gathering your own evidence of this. And the truth is, this is the mindset of a philanthropist. You know, I always want the principles that I teach to be universal. You might have heard me use this example before, but I don't believe in teaching comparison gratitude, where our basis for gratitude is there's somebody starving right now, there's somebody who doesn't have a home right now, there's somebody who has it worse off right now. Let us think of that. Let us think of the people who are going through hard times, and let us be grateful, right? And listen, I'm not hating on that. If that's what you do at the dinner table or the Thanksgiving table, I'm not here to judge, okay? But there's a reason I don't teach comparison gratitude, and it's because I don't want my basis for gratitude to be somebody else is suffering. Somebody else has it worse. Somebody else does not have enough, so let me be grateful. I am not interested in being grateful while everybody else suffers, right? That's not the idea. That's not the goal of any of this. I want everyone living in the good. Because everything real and everything valuable and everything divine only increases when we share it. So I want to make this point here. If you decide that you want to practice this and try it out and see the flow that it creates in your life, and I believe that you will feel so enriched just by doing this and being a giver and circulating your energy in this way, and truly you will experience for yourself the world of the generous gets larger and larger. But I want to clarify, as you do this, if you decide to try it, you are always free to do whatever you want and to give wherever you want. If there is somebody in need, if there is somebody suffering, if there is somebody struggling that you feel called to help, you can do so. And maybe if it's a calling you feel, maybe even you are meant to be the one that does so. So there is room for that. I think there's a place for that. I practice that personally all the time. But I also want to clarify, for me, those are mostly private moments that I will never share with the world or talk about here. And by the way, multiple sacred texts talk about when you give to someone in need, keep it a secret. Do not tell anyone. Do not broadcast giving to someone in need, because we want to protect human dignity. And we don't want to, be the people doing charity for show or exploiting anyone or making ourselves feel better by doing it, etc., right? But I want to clarify that that is not what the bulk of this conversation is about to me. Because hopefully, as you can feel from all of this, the paradigm that I operate in with giving is not, I find someone else that is struggling or suffering or doing worse than me, and so I'm going to give to them. Again, do that wherever, whoever, whenever you want. Nothing wrong with that. Please do it in a way that protects and preserves people's dignity, right? But I want to clarify, the kind of giving that I'm really talking about here does not require somebody else to be suffering in order for you to have a reason or a place to give, right? This is about giving to what we want to create, to what we want to support, to what we want to see in the world. And I often quote, the book that made the biggest impact on me as a little toddler was this picture book that we would read at school called, But What If Everybody Did? But what if everybody did? And as I wrote this down in my notes, giving to the world we want to create, giving to the vision we want to see, giving to what we believe in and want to support and want to expand as a presence in our world. I wrote down, imagine a world where everybody did that. Imagine a world where everybody chose to give, not just out of guilt, not just out of obligation, not just out of sympathy. Imagine a world where everybody chose to give, making a powerful contribution to the world they wanted to see. These are some of the questions I want you to ask yourself along the lines of this principle. Where do I want to circulate my resources and energy? What message do I want out in the world? What consciousness do I want to spread and increase in this universe? What is making a difference in my life? What do I want to bless other people with? What do I want to support? To be there for somebody else like me in a moment they need it the most. These are expansive questions that I believe get us thinking about where we can give in a way that does not require someone else to be worse off for us to decide to give, that does not require an unjust world for this principle to exist, that does not require sympathy giving, but rather I choose to sow wisely, consciously, joyfully as a powerful force for good in the world. You know, for me particularly, as my inner world is the most important thing for me, it is an absolute joy for me to support that which fuels my inner world. There are so many people over the years, and I may never buy something from them. I may never meet them, right? They may never know I exist or know my name. But I got a life-changing idea from them. But God spoke to me through them. But I heard the message that I needed in the moment I needed it most through them. that something they said, something they embodied, something they shared changed the trajectory of my life. Something they created inspired me, encouraged me, affected me, shifted me, transformed me. And there's so many instances where somebody like this, an organization like this, a leader like this, etc., it has felt correct and expansive and healthy and reciprocal and beautiful to be able to give. Not because I thought they were in crisis, not because I thought they wouldn't be okay without it, not because I was giving out of sympathy or I thought they were in lack or any of those paradigms that often get wrapped up in this. It just felt good to return to the quote I gave earlier, to feed what was feeding me, to bless what was blessing me, to give to what was giving to me. Couple personal stories and moments that I wrote down that I at least wanted to consider sharing with you here. I remember one time there was a specific desire I had of something I really wanted to experience. And I was trying to make it happen, but things kept getting stuck. It felt unattainable. It felt far away. And I remember one day I heard this spiritual truth and was reminded of it. What you make happen for somebody else, God will make happen for you. What you make happen for somebody else, God will make happen for you. And so in that moment, with my giving, I chose to give and support someone else who was fully living that dream. I helped them make it happen. I helped them bring it to life. I helped them sustain it. Right? Even though I had that dream myself and I was still frustrated about it, right? But I believe in this stuff. And I was reminded of this truth. What you make happen for somebody else, God will make happen for you. And I said, you know what? I may not have this yet, but I love what they're doing with it. And I want to get my energy cleaned up around this anyway, so I'm going to give and support them. And it filled me with such joy. I thought I would have a weird jealousy or envy or resentment I would have to overcome about this. The giving cleaned up all of that. It filled me with joy to support somebody else, even though it was somebody else who had the appearance of having what I wanted. It gave me so much to give, right? And plot twist, P.S., unsurprisingly, I got mine in the end, right? There are so many examples. I wrote down a bunch of stuff. I don't want to share all of them, but I remember in college giving to those who had shown me the way and helped me in those early formative years so much, even though I felt like a broke college student, right? I remember I surprised some adults, both in the spiritual world and the coaching world. I surprised adults because I believe in this principle and I wanted to give and I wanted to give to what had blessed my life in so many ways. And they were like, wow, people who are a lot further in their careers are not as committed to giving as this kid. But I believed in this. I remember one time there was a project I felt led to give to. And very specifically, it was the first time that I had ever felt like above and beyond the percentage, give this as a gift. But I'm very intuitively guided in everything I do. And this was the first moment I really remember having one of these moments. And I just remember hearing this guidance, give $500 to this project. Now at the time, $500 felt massive to me, but I really intuitively felt guided, give the $500 to this project. And so I did. It was the first time that I had felt clearly guided around something, and it was the first time that I had given in a way that really stretched beyond just my overall commitment, beyond my percentage. And I felt stretched, but I knew it was right. And by the way, that's an important point with all of this. This is not something that you should have to be sold on. And I'm certainly not going to hard sell you or soft sell you on it, right? I'm going to share what I know to be true, what I know to be principles, and what I know to have worked for me for over a decade. But as I said from the very beginning, what you do with it is up to you. I wanted to, by the way, record this for the first time and offer it for the first time completely free, taking no money as an investment for this program, so that people could feel free, no pun intended, to do with this information and this material and this teaching whatever they wanted. And if it doesn't resonate with you, totally fine. You didn't pay for it anyway. You hopefully just gave to someone or something you believe in, right? But this is real stuff to me. This is what I live by. This is me preaching what I practice right now. And so I remember I gave $500 to this project. And that felt like such a big decision for me. But I didn't have to be sold on it. Right? See, that's the other thing. This is such an intuitive, self-trusting, grounded thing, right? This is not high stakes, high pressure offering mode. And so I didn't have to be sold on it by anyone. I just intuitively knew. I just had a knowing. So I gave to this project. And I will never forget, the next week, I went over to a mentor's house, and I stayed with them for the weekend. We had a great time, etc. And on my way out, they gave me a card. And, I didn't think anything of it. I take the card. I go to my car. I can still envision the silver Chevy Monte Carlo that I had, and I can still envision the parking lot where it was parked. And I go to my car, and I open the card, and there is a check there for $1,000. And they said, we just wanted to bless you with this. We just wanted you to have this at this time of year. And I have to tell you, and I wrote this down in my notes because this is literally how it felt. I thought that people who told those kinds of stories, I thought they were made up. I could not believe it. It felt uncanny to me that I had felt guided to give to this specific project at a specific amount that felt like a stretch to me. And then a week later, I'm handed a card and there's a check in it for double the amount. I thought that these kinds of stories were made up. But this is why I say, there is an interactive power and miracle and flow that happens when you give. I didn't invent this. I didn't create this. I can't take credit for it, but I have experienced it over and over again for over a decade. What you give truly does come back to you with even more. If that is the prosperity gospel, then so be it. But this is a good story to live into. I would never share this if it was just an experimental thing for me, because this feels way too risky and controversial to put out there. If it was just a test, right? I wouldn't share this if it wasn't something that I had literally lived by and practiced with thousands of examples of evidence all of this time. And interestingly enough, since the very, very, very beginning of my work, there have been people in various moments, various types of people from all over the world, online and in person, who have said to me, I believe in what you're doing. Can I give? Can I support you? I'm not asking to be a client. I'm not asking to buy something. Can I just give and support you and your work? And I have to tell you, I am in my 10th full year of coaching right now. And I was always, for all of this time, from the mentor, it felt like a personal gift, and I could receive it. I didn't really have a choice at that point. I was in the car with the card. But when people would ask me, I believe in you. I believe in the work that you're doing so much. We need this. The world needs more of this. I want to sow into this. I was very reluctant about that. And for the majority of my career and the decade up to this point, I have simply said, no, thank you, no. For the majority of my career, I have simply said, I can offer you something to buy. You can buy this, right? And by the way, I've offered over the years many high value, high quality things, which I still do and which I will continue doing, right? But it's funny because the offer of this came back around this year. And this time it felt different. And it felt like I was divinely being talked to and guided and prompted to be open to receive. And you know, it's interesting timing because as I shifted into this year, one of my biggest intentions, one of my biggest points of focus was serving more people than ever before, with more free content and resources and power than ever before, and with more accessible content and options and programming than ever before to help people all around the world change their lives and get what they want from the inside out, right? And really, even on a deeper level than that, helping people know just how unconditionally loved they are. Helping people feel their wholeness, their value, their worth. Helping people heal from the God trauma. Helping people connect to their source in a way that works for them. Helping people begin to create their lives in a way that is exciting and fun and life-changing. And as I moved into this year, I really felt guided to reach more people than ever before in a one-to-many way. And I will never forget, there was a session this year, I was on the call with my own coach. Shout out Danielle Randall, I love you, I love her. I was on the phone with her, and she said to me, you do realize that so many of the people you learn from, so many of the people who speak to you in the moments that matter most, so many of the people you look to for guidance and inspiration and etc., you do realize it's people doing ministry. And not to negate anything coaching that you pay for, not to negate anything in business, not to negate anything in the more traditional personal development sense, but she said, you do realize there's this ministry thing that is a very real stream of consciousness for you. And truly everything that you do is a ministry that comes from love. But she asked me, how would it feel to just own that? What does that word feel like to you? What does that energy feel like to you? And I have stepped into that more than ever this year, and it feels a little scary, it feels a little uncomfortable, it feels a little new, but I am living in this space knowing that I truly am doing ministry, not in the way that they might have wanted me to in the cult, or that I might have thought I would when I first went to college as a theology major, but I am doing ministry in all of the work that I do and in everywhere that I go, and even in this training today. And so I'm going to be here doing my thing with a message of unconditional love and absolute wholeness and infinite possibility. And I'm going to be here doing this whether you ever buy from me or not, whether you ever become a client or not, whether you ever want to support the work in any way or not. I'm going to be here and it's going to be available. But I wanted to talk about this because I do believe we are in a moment collectively where, not in the GoFundMe way as much as in the Patreon way, if that makes sense, whether it is art or justice or service or humor or self-expression or connection or community or pleasure or learning or healing work or anything else, we are in a collective moment where we are all understanding that we want to circulate to that which adds to our lives. We want to feed what's feeding us. We want to bless what's blessing us. We want to give to that which is giving to us. And there's a new energy exchange paradigm. that I think is really an ancient one, but one that is in this moment in the collective. And by the way, in the AI world that we are now truly living in, I believe this is where we're headed overall, where consciousness is the most valuable thing, and people are paid for their gifts and their energy and the contribution of their presence more than just raw skills. And that's another tangent. I won't get on that here, right? But I felt like it was time to share this principle. And I felt like after a decade of telling people, no, you can buy something. If you want to buy something, you can do this. You can sign up for this. You can become a client. But no. I don't receive in that way. Isn't that a funny thing in consciousness? I felt like it was time to share this, and it was time to open up to receive. Because I have given to teachers and leaders and coaches and ministries and healers and organizations and all sorts of people and all sorts of groups for over a decade that have blessed me and changed my life and added to my world. I've done that for over a decade, and I've been blessed by the giving. My world has been expanded by the giving all of this time. As I said, I really do believe the world of the generous gets larger and larger and larger is a real scientific truth. It's how it feels, at least. And I believe this is what expanded my world so quickly early on, right? And I have been blessed by the giving. I have received back more than I ever dreamed. And I finally reached a point this year of, why would I not share what I know about this principle? And why would I not give my community the opportunity to participate as well? It was like God said to me, Stephan, you know what giving has added to your life. You know what it has done for you. You know where it has taken you. It has never taken anything from you, but it has always taken you somewhere. It has always added so much to your life and left you with more. Given that you know that that is true, and given that you know that people are wanting to bless you, wanting to sow into good ground, wanting to support your energy, your presence, your voice, your message, your work in the world, and also just to experience this principle for themselves, it's time, God said, to be available for circulation of overflow. And I really felt it was time to live the truth that I know, that it truly is more blessed to give than to receive. I'm not going to keep that a secret. I give every day, and I am in harvest mode every day, and I am continually blessed by my giving. And I believe you can experience that too. And if you want to experience that, by sowing into what I'm about, what I am creating, what I am doing in the world, I'm open to receive just as much as I am open to give. It truly is more blessed to give than to receive, and it is meant to be a circulation. And so I just heard this confirmation. Keep giving, but let yourself be available to receive through other people who want to give. So I'm doing that now. In the description of this video, we're gonna put a link that you can use, paypal.me/Stephan Lovegrove. We'll put the link down there. You can send any amount through this link. You will have a record of it through this link. And if you go through PayPal, which is what the link is, you can use the notes section to share an intention, to give your seed an assignment every time. I want you to know, if you choose to do this, and by the way, this is truly an if and truly a only if you choose, right? That this is not something that I want people to be sold into. This is something that I want people to freely, joyfully, abundantly do from a frequency of overflow if it resonates with you. But if you do this, I really do want you to use that notes section, because I would love to know what you are setting into motion, what you are declaring, what intention you are putting into the ground. And I want you to know, for anyone and everyone that chooses to do this at any time, number one, thank you, thank you, thank you. I receive every single gift with immense gratitude. I don't take the gifts for granted. I don't take you for granted. I don't take it for granted that you trust me and want to partner with me, knowing what I'm putting out into the world is good ground. Number two, know that I pray for all of you every single day. From an energy of blessing, you've heard me talk about the energy of blessing, but specifically, if you do this, I want to see, I want to read, I want to hear what intentions you are setting into motion, and I want you to know, I am blessing your every intention. I am blessing what you are setting into motion at Cause. I am blessing the specific assignment you're giving that seed, and I am blessing that everything you give always comes back to you multiplied. I know that to be true for my giving. I know that to be true for yours. Number three, I stand in agreement with you always. The most powerful thing in the world is an agreement. And I really do believe with my clients, with my community, and with anyone who chooses to be a partner in this way, I stand in agreement with you. You're not in this alone. You're not believing alone, right? And this is an invitation, again, only for those who resonate with it. But here's what I do believe, if you've made it this far in the training, right? Whether or not that particular piece spoke to you, I'm willing to bet there is someone you believe in. There is someone whose work you would love to support. There is someone or some group, some organization that you trust and feel good about. There is someone or something that you want to see more of in the world. There is someone or something out there that does speak to you, that does bless you, that does add to your life. And if you can think of even one example, because you don't have to commit to only one, but if you can think of even one example of that, I want to invite you to join me for the 30-day generosity challenge. And I really want to invite you to do this no matter who it is. It could be an organization that I don't like. It could be a person who teaches something, embodies something very different than me, even contrary to me, right? I'm not here to tell you where to give, and I will not, I promise you, I will not judge your giving. It is between you and God, what you choose to do with your energy, with your resources, with your seed in the ground, right? But I want to invite you, if you are interested in creating a continual flow through giving, to try out the 30-day generosity challenge. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick a percentage now that you are going to give from your overflow. Again, right? This isn't something that you have to really deliberate about up front, and it's a lot of pressure because I don't know where the numbers are going to land this month, right? You're choosing, this is the percentage that I can joyfully choose to give from my overflow, however much my overflow turns out to be, and I'm open to it growing. I'm open to it expanding, right? So you're going to pick a percentage, and you're going to pick a place to give that you truly see as good ground. Again, I don't care who or what it is. I happily make myself open to receive. If you want to partner with me, I think you know who I am, you know what I believe, you know what I'm about, you know the message I'm putting into the world, you know the frequency that I show up with and the truth that I stand for, but you choose the good ground that you want to give to, right? And then I want you to give the percentage you chose to the place you chose every time money flows in, right? Every time. And just for the purposes of this challenge, you don't ever have to do this again. You don't have to keep this going. But if you're going to join me for the challenge, and please comment below if you are, if you're going to join me for the challenge, I want you to write down an intention every time you give. And this is a beautiful opportunity to get clear on it, to declare it, and then to release it, right? All you have to do is get clear on it, own it, write it down, and then release it, leave it in the list, and move forward, right? But make a list, at least for the 30-day duration of this challenge. Again, I want to hear in the comments if you're choosing to do this, and make a list, right, of these intentions. Let them pile up. Let yourself start to get excited about a harvest that's coming. Let yourself start to observe seed in the ground, right? Now, will every single thing you put on that list probably reach a full and complete harvest in 30 days, okay? I'm going to say no. I am willing to set an honest and fair expectation for you. Probably not. Not necessarily is every single thing you're going to put on that list. I'm owning. Today was a fast turnaround with an immediate intention. Every single one of my intentions is not, and that's okay. Some of mine have been years in the making, and that's okay. But 30 days is more than enough time for you to establish a new belief system and identity as a giver. 30 days is more than enough time for you to get some good seed in the ground that you feel excited about. And by the way, it is so fun to do this with intentions. It gets me extra excited. On one hand, I know that where I'm giving is good ground, and I bless that person, I bless those people, I bless the organization, I bless every dollar that flows, I bless everyone that it touches, right? And so it feels good to do that and to know the work that I'm supporting. It also feels good to know that everything I give always comes back to me and comes back to me multiplied. That feels good. And then it feels good to set an intention, knowing I get to, at cause, set energy into motion. And it feels good to write it down. It feels good to put it out there. It feels extra good when somebody lets you put it in the notes and you can put it out there in agreement, right? It feels so good to be a giver in this way. I want to end today with an affirmative prayer, which you all know I love to do. So let's just close our eyes as long as you're safe and comfortable doing so wherever you happen to be right now. And we just move into the prayer space for just a few moments. This won't be a really long one. But we just say thank you. Thank you, God, for bringing me here. Thank you, God, for a life and a career that is already more than I ever dreamed. Thank you that I am living in overflow. Thank you that I am a generative being, that I always get to choose what I create. Thank you, God, that there is so much good to celebrate. Thank you for all the moments and twists and turns of my life that have led me here. Thank you for everything that is here and now in this perfect present moment. What a gift that I am willing to receive. Thank you, God, for all that is flowing in, even as I speak these words. Thank you, God, for every person who is under the sound of my voice right now. Thank you for their heart. Thank you for their vision. Thank you for their willingness to see something new. Thank you for their deep compassion for the world. Thank you for the kind of human they are. Thank you for the kind of leader that they are. Thank you that they were willing to show up today for this training and to let it be a life-changing day. And in the spirit of this teaching, God, we recognize the one source of all that there is. The breath in our lungs comes from you. The heartbeat that keeps us going comes from you. We acknowledge that you are the unending source and supply of every good and perfect gift. And we plug in now, we reconnect to our source, and we feel at home, and we let ourselves rest here, and we let ourselves be unconditionally loved here, and we let ourselves be so nourished, so supported, so taken care of here. And I speak the word for every person watching this training that they are an infinite child of God, and you have given them all things. There is no separation. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing being withheld from them. You have given them all things. They are entitled to miracles because that is what they are. And so I bless every single person connected to this training. May something that they heard today stick with them and impact them and change them for the rest of their lives. May they go forward from this training feeling a little more loved and supported. May they go forward from this training feeling a little more relaxed, feeling a little more trusting, feeling a little more generous. May they go forth from this training thinking about where they can give, excited to give, looking for opportunities to give. May they go forward from this training as more of a beneficial presence on the planet than they have ever been before. And specifically, I bless every person who is saying yes to the 30-day generosity challenge. I bless them as they are guided to exactly where they are supposed to give. I bless them as they choose a percentage that feels good but expansive. And God, I hear the principle, you will know what to say, you will know what to do. I speak that over every person. You will know the number that is right for you. And so I bless them as they are guided in that way. I bless them for their courage and their bravery and their commitment as they may be stretching themselves into something new here. But I bless them in all the days to come. I bless them in these 30 days and all that lie beyond. God, may they feel that it is truly more blessed to give than to receive. May they feel the joy of it. May they feel the power of it. May they feel and see clear, concrete evidence that everything they give is multiplied and then returns to them with even more. May they see their intentions come to life. May they see their seed turn into harvest. May they be moved into a season of permanent and perpetual overflow where they are always expecting a harvest, where they are always expecting to receive, and every time, literally every time they receive, they know they have yet another opportunity to give. I bless them into abundance. I bless them into success. I bless them into joy. I bless them into guidance. Check, check, check. I bless them into opportunity. I bless them into possibility. And bring this training full circle. I bless them into a new story, a new reality, a new experience of prosperity, where they are continuously successful and thriving and flourishing. God, I decree and declare, you see them as whole, you see them as abundant, you see them as unconditionally loved and love itself and infinitely lovable. You see them as prosperous, you see them as thriving, you see them as completely healed, you see them as a perfect creation of God that remains as you created them. So God, I pray that they would have the most clear, undeniable, joyful experience of prosperity that they have ever had before. And that it would enable them to give in a way they never dreamed. God, it is such a privilege to be able to move the needle when I give, and I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you for every opportunity to give. Thank you for every opportunity to receive. Thank you for continual flow. I can honestly stand here today and say, God, you have never, ever, ever failed me. There is continual flow, always more on the way, from an infinite source and supply that has planned for my safety and joy. So we say thank you. We know that everything is working together perfectly for us now. Thank you. We know that we are right where we are supposed to be right now. Thank you. We know that things are happening in the unseen realm that haven't manifested yet, but we know it is correct to have a good expectation for what is on the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, even with this seed of prayer and word and gratitude, we put it into the ground with an expectation of all the good we know is surely about to manifest. We release, we let go of our seed, we expect a harvest with certainty. And we move forward from this place in gratitude, in vision, in expectation, in overflow, and in generosity. Thank you, God, for continual flow. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to give and receive. For every person who watched or listened to this training, their world gets larger and larger and larger from this day forward. And so it is. Amen.